And we have some sad news here at home. Murray Sinclair has died. The former Chief Commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was 73. The House of Commons paid tribute to Sinclair earlier today.
He was a visionary and a leader, and his kind and fierce commitment to truth has pushed Canada forward in profound and lasting ways. Our hearts and minds are with his family, and Canada is a much better place for his service.
MPs also had a moment of silence in Sinclair's honour. He was widely admired for his work in advancing justice for Indigenous people, and he did so in many ways as a lawyer, a judge, and a senator. He's also being remembered for his leadership in bringing Canada's painful history of residential schools to the national consciousness. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh spoke to reporters about Murray Sinclair. Both praised his lifelong dedication to the pursuit of truth and justice.
With the Honourable Murray Sinclair's passing today, Canada lost a giant. Murray's commitment to this country, his commitment to the ideals of this country, his commitment to Indigenous peoples and to all Canadians was absolutely extraordinary, and he will be missed by people from coast to coast to coast.
Someone who people looked up to across this country as a hero, and particularly for Indigenous people. He spent his whole life fighting every step of the way against the impacts of colonialism on Indigenous people. And despite all that trauma, all that pain, he never gave up hope. He had an immense hope for Indigenous people, but particularly for young people.
Now let's bring in a friend of Murray's, Tanya Talaga. She's an author and a Globe and Mail columnist, and we reached her today in Toronto. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us.
Miigwech, thank you.
Tanya, first of all, I want to express my condolences to you because I know that he wasn't just someone you admired, you knew him quite well. Tell me what went through your mind when you first found out about his death.
Well, you know, we all expected this day to come, but when it came, it was still just such a shock. He was such a great and wonderful man. And it was actually a reporter from the CBC that told me that he had died. And believe it or not, I was standing at a ceremony to remember the signing of Treaty Number 9 with Indigenous leaders, teachers, children, when I received the call about Murray. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, I can't believe that this great man left us with this great legacy of education, and there I was with all of these children and all of these Canadians, Indigenous and non, hearing about the great man's passing.
Tell me, just reading his biography and from everything I've known of him, he was such an extraordinary person, really a child prodigy, extraordinary student, a gifted athlete, a young lawyer and a judge at a time when doing so and being Indigenous was not easy and very rare. But there was so much more to him. Tell us about how he should be remembered. Who are we losing today?
We are losing a great man. I don't know if Canada really realizes the impact that he had on this country. The legacy that he has left this country is vast. He, along with the other commissioners, left 94 calls to action with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And these calls were crafted largely under the direction of Murray with the other commissioners, but he definitely was a leading force in putting these forward. You know, he was the very first Anishinaabe Indigenous justice in Manitoba. He was a lawyer. He was a relentless fighter for our rights and to educate everybody, to educate Canadians about the harms that what has happened in this country due to colonial laws and legacies. He was such a warm, gentle, sweet spirit of a man. And he held all those stories from survivors, witnesses of Indian residential schools. He carried them, and he never forgot the stories that he was told and the great honor that he was given with carrying those stories.
Speaking of stories, you are an author as well. In your most recent book, The Knowing, you weave in your own family's painful history with residential schools with a more general historical outlook and overview of what these schools did to Indigenous communities. And Murray Sinclair did play a role in giving you advice that you carried into your work. Tell me how Murray's words are seen in your most recent book.
You know, I always turn to Murray for help when I was in some kind of a jam or if I was trying to figure something out. He would always be there on the other end of the phone or through an email message because I'm in Toronto and he's in Winnipeg. And it was when I was writing The Knowing, I was trying to get a hold of him and I couldn't get a hold of him. And then when he finally called, it was like getting a giant hug, you know, but he had been going through such a hard time himself. He had lost his beloved wife, Catherine. He was very sick. He was also trying to finish his own memoir. It was a race to finish that book with his failing health. And he gave me some advice, as he always does. He told me to keep writing, that Canadians needed to hear the truth, and that he wrote the TRC to arm the reasonable, to leave a roadmap of how to go forward in this country, how to heal the spirit of Canada. I'll never forget that last conversation that we had, you know. Hanging up the phone, I wondered if it would be the last time I spoke with him. And it was. But I carry him and his message in my heart. And I hope that myself, I know I will, but I hope other Canadians will join with me in carrying forward his legacy.
Tanya, thank you so much for letting us know a little bit of who he was as well, that warmth and generosity you described, in addition, of course, to his piercing intellect that so many people know of. And today, Canada lost such an important figure, but you lost a friend as well. Thank you so much for sharing your memories of Murray with us.
Miigwech, thank you.
Tanya Talaga is an author, a Globe and Mail columnist, and a friend of Murray Sinclair's.